Is Lysha Holmes, and I'm your host of the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast. And I am very excited to welcome to our global community today somebody that I've had the absolute joy to get to know. I'd say probably over the last year or so, probably more
Yeah.
recently than that, but certainly over 2024, we built a really firm relationship. And in fact, if you have been an avid watcher and listener, you'll know that I think I've been on her show as well recently. But without further ado, I'd like to welcome today Kate O'Neill, who is a coach, a trainer, and an agency founder, an all-time brilliant person, to be honest with you. And I've loved getting to know Kate. So I hope you'll warmly welcome her. So without further ado, here's Kate. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good. Thank you for that glowing introduction. I was blushing a little bit then, so thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. So there will be people, I think we've got very similar audiences. Certainly over on LinkedIn, but there'll be plenty of people that listen because we do have a global community that don't know who you are. So give us a synopsis of who you are, what you do, and why you're here today.
So, well, you've already said my name, so I'm
Have.
Kate. I've been in recruitment now, I think it's just hit 12 years, like in November last year. So I've worked in agency, consultant level manager and stuff like that, but now business owner. So I've got two businesses, Kate O'Neill Coaching, which is coaching, training, sort of behavioral management sort of stuff. That's the one business. And then the second business, and you're the first to hear this because I haven't done the little launch of it yet. I've got an agency which is only a couple of months old, a few months old, and I'm already rebranding. So
Wow. Love it.
that is now called the Slinger Academy. I can't wait for all the stuff to go out for it. But it's essentially helping trainees and agencies find trainees, bring newbies into our industry, but they're already trained and they come with sort of aftercare and support just to
Yeah.
sort of stock up the levels of future talent that we need because the experienced consultants are not what's that word when you never die? Can't think of the word. What is it?
Evergreen?
How?
Evergreen?
Yeah, or yeah, I don't know what. Not invincible. Oh, I can't think. My mind's gone blank. But
Oh,
basically, they're not going to live forever, right?
immortal.
That's it. Immortal. That's it. We got
No,
there in the
got there
end.
in the
So
end.
yeah, that's essentially the premise behind it is doing all the hard leg work for the agencies, giving them great trainees, quality people that are going to stay, perform, all of that good stuff.
So I'd like to go back a step actually to understand what made you think that that was needed. And it's a bit of a loaded question because obviously I'm on the other side anyone that's listening knows my day job's a rec, but I don't do entry level. I only work with the experienced recruitment fee earner market. So let's go back a step. Why do you think that this was needed?
So with the coaching business, I do or have done a lot of work with newbies. I love it. So I do work with more experienced consultants as well, but there's something about that trainee level that I just love, get a massive kick out of it. So as a result, spent a lot of time in agencies with people at that sort of level. And there were just some things I was noticing. So sometimes I go in and I'll be honest, I'd think, how have some of these people got here? Like, why have you hired them? Sometimes I'd go in probably too late. I'd be brought in too late, and I'd be thinking, well, how have these people not been given this help yet? Like you're expecting them to be X, Y, and Z, but you haven't given them any sort of training or support. And I was also hearing through conversations the frustrations a lot of agencies that were having that wanted trainees. So we just find it so difficult to know who's best. How do we pick people? Where do we find them? What process do we take them through? Um, so there was all these problems that I was hearing, and also some agencies they did want experience, but they were also struggling to find the amount of people they needed, the right people. So all these things together, and this is over a couple of years, I just started to feel like I could do something about this, and I actually want to do something about it. And since I started the coaching business, pretty much every client has said to me like, "Why aren't you still doing recruitment?
Yeah.
Like you love it. Why aren't you still
Yeah.
doing it?" And all those things together, I just thought it was like a niggle, and you can't get rid of it. And I just thought, do
It's
you
an
know what? If
itch.
I don't do it, huh? And yeah, an itch that I
Itch.
needed to scratch.
Yeah.
Just like if you don't do it, potentially somebody else could do it, and that would really piss you off.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also, what have you got to lose,
Mm,
really? Give it a go. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But
But you're
I
coming
know
at
what I'm like to
it.
put my all into it.
But you're coming at it for, as a coach and as a trainer, and that's, I think that is for me what is the defining element of why this is really needed in our industry, because I think it's so important for those listening, particularly those that have maybe entered the industry much post COVID, maybe sort of even in the boom of 2022, is that there wasn't time. There wasn't the time or the investment needed for companies who are hiring at scale, and very often it was new people that didn't have any industry
Mm.
experience, where because the market was so job rich, it was almost like and I'm going to say this really, really flippantly, it wasn't needed as much. I don't agree with that, but that's kind of, I think, the
That
headline of
was the thought.
that was
Yeah.
that was the thought behind why people weren't. And then of course we've then gone the other end of the extreme, where we've had this, catastrophic drop in the market post 2023. 2024, I think it was one of the hardest recruitment years I've ever known, and I've been in it 26 years.
Yeah.
So I think you are so, I think you're reading the room right. And I'm not just blowing smoke at you, Kate. I think you're reading the room right. I think that there's a real need in our industry, particularly in the UK, which is my market, for people coming into the industry who are armed with a reality check as to what the job actually is, that it ain't, gone are the days where you could advertise and say earn OTE for 100k in your first year. It's absolute bullshit. It's nonsense.
No, not
And
gonna happen.
where you're not just going to be sat at a phone on a database with all your tech and go make loads of money. That was such a unique year in time, that 2022 year, that I think anyone that's listening now that is thinking about scaling, whether it be on a small scale, by the way, micro businesses, or whether you're a large scale leader with, multi sites, I think that you absolutely have to underpin your growth strategy with new people. And the people that you bring in have to have the core elements of training. And I've always thought that as we record this now in a very challenging economic time, now is the time to double down on your training, to double down on training and developing your existing people, your leaders, training your
Yeah.
trainers, marketing, double down on your invest in your technology. You should actually be spending almost more money now than you would do in a boom market. I mean, I've just said an awful lot there. What do you think about my perception? Because we're coming at it from a similar angle, I think.
Yeah, I think the when we had this post-COVID boom, as you pointed out, a lot of newbies were taken on. Fantastic. But because there was like, we need people, and we both know you could be shit or average and still bill. So
Mm-hmm.
there was like, let's just bring all these people in, and they seemed to do okay.
Yeah.
Then when the market changed, they weren't doing okay, and it highlighted the people that just weren't right, that were hired and were wrong. And a lot of them have gone now. I feel like they've sort of
Yeah.
mainly exited either voluntarily or been
Yeah.
told.
Yeah.
Um, and so we've got that now. But there was, like you say, there was this period where, oh, do we really need training? They're doing all right, and one big thing I've noticed is, forget the training, which is just as important. There's big gaps in training and knowledge at a newer level. Mindset. So
Mm.
we've gone through this a couple of really hard years, right? They've gone post-COVID boom.
Yep.
Recruitment's amazing. It's really easy. I just pick clients up and I sneeze. You know what I mean? To the opposite. And this isn't just newbies, this is the whole consultant team and the
Absolutely.
managers.
Yeah.
It's like PTSD central because
Yeah.
it's so
Agree.
hard last year and the year before. And I'm talking, I know, because I was, you, me, and my worst year of business.
Mm.
Really difficult. And a lot of these people have not got the resilience, the mindset, the coping strategies, especially at the newer level, to cope. And the reason why they're still underperforming is not because they don't know what to do now, because some of them have had training. It's because they've got limiting beliefs, confidence issues,
Yeah. Agree.
loads of stuff going on.
Yeah.
And can you imagine if you're given a person that, for example, can pick up the phone and make a business development call, pick up the phone and ring a candidate, and has got that sort of well-rounded support and um, attitude that you
Mm.
need
Mm.
from day one. Obviously, it needs work still from there.
Of course it does.
Amazing,
Yeah. I
but
think
these people need help.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I'm keen to sort of move to the next stage of our conversation in terms of what what advice you're going to give around that hiring and the people that are thinking of getting into recruitment. But I think it's a really great summary and conclusion that in order to survive and thrive in what is recruitment, this now is recruitment. 2022 was a blip. It was a crazy
This is normal.
blip. This is now normal recruitment. So I think as a very first step to understanding who will survive and thrive in recruitment, whether you're a leader or whether you're a recruiter, I think it is understanding that this is it. So can we talk about attitude? Because how do you identify, if you're positioning this to recruitment agencies, how do you identify whether someone has the right attitude for recruitment?
So I take them through a process which involves a lot of support, a lot of guidance, but I'm also sort of testing them little bits along the way. So just as a bit of the background, before I set up the coaching business, I worked in an agency where I led the graduate division. Now, we supplied sales reps to the pharmaceutical industry. They took on shitloads of newbies, like mainly fresh out of uni, which is not my preference. I don't care where people come from,
Yep.
but they did. But they would look outside that sometimes. So I've spent about 7 years working at that level of new sort of person, and I'm replicating the same steps almost, or the same things I was looking for then, because attitude was huge for these pharmaceutical companies. So that's just so people know the background. This isn't something I've just
No.
plucked out of thin air. Also, from working with with trainees a lot in agencies for years now as well, it's sort of molded along the way. I know what good looks
Yep.
like.
Of course you do.
So when I'm having that sort of first conversation with them, yeah, I know I want to get to know their backgrounds, their any sort of transferable skills experience, but I'm getting to know them as a person. So, like, what are they into? What makes them tick? What pisses them off? Like, what are their goals, aspirations? What
Yeah.
motivates them? Because I want to know this well-rounded individual. Because I know a lot of people might say, well, how can somebody be resilient when they're 21? And I'm not just speaking to people at that age, but I'm giving an example. But you don't know, like, people have experienced a lot of things in life by that age that actually
No.
make them very resilient.
Exactly.
So I'm finding those things out. I'm on the phone to them for like an hour, my candidates. Like, I'm really getting to know them, but I'm also giving them little tasks. Now, if they come to me and I ask them, look, what do you think a recruiter does? And they literally are clueless. I give them some homework, I give them some videos they can go and watch. I suggest they try and speak to a recruiter, all these sort of things, and I let them go away and do it. Now, if they don't do it, they're not asked. They don't want this job enough. I'm not going to
No.
bother with them.
No.
And I don't keep chasing.
No.
Like, that's it.
That's it. It's that. It's that.
That's it. You're
Have
not
they
showing me you
got?
want it.
Show me you want it. Literally, it's
Show me
that
you want it.
commitment to doing it, to doing a task and to doing it
And
properly.
I'm supporting them. I'm giving them video. I'm giving them so much help. I'm
Yeah.
sending them like
Yeah.
resources they can use. Now, the ones that really are keen, they either come back before I say I'm going to follow up, or they're on it. Do you know what I mean? Now, that great. If I speak to them and I ask them what they think a recruiter does, and they really give a good go at it, and they've done research,
Mhm.
that's a good for me. I'm like, great. Like, you've looked at the job ad. You're all right. You've probably not wanted to be a recruiter since birth, but you've made an effort to go and look into it. Great. So it's those sort of things.
Yeah.
And I then get them booked in for what I call a coaching session with me. Now,
Right.
I'm doing sort of practical exercises with them. I'm looking for potential, not perfection. I'm looking for
No,
potential, but I'm also looking at their attitudes in that session.
of course you are.
So if I know they haven't got a job and they text me the day before, oh, something's come up, can we move? Bit of a red flag.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I definitely want to pick up on this because I think I I see this and I measure this in the actions or lack of actions that somebody takes. And this isn't unique just to new talent, by the way. This is generally, but specifically to new talent. How, if you're listening now, and we do get a lot of people message all the way around the globe, and it's really lovely that they're in their first recruitment job and they want to learn it all. That's why they're listening to podcasts. And to me, it's, if you're going for an interview or you're, going, having an appraisal or you are pitching to a new client, you have so much information that you can access without even having to ask for help on it. at the point where you're asking for help, what have you done yourself off your own volition? What have you done
Yeah.
yourself to show initiative? So I'll give you an example. I've recently worked with somebody who was actually in their second job in recruitment, but still relatively youthful in their recruitment career as a whole evolution. And they said they were at final stage, and they said, what's the name of the MD of the company that I'm seeing for the final stage? And I went, go and have a
You
look.
could easily find that out.
Why should I have to tell you that? You should have you been on LinkedIn? And think, well, yeah, of course I've been on LinkedIn. Well, then you can easily find that information out. Now, I'm very conscious that
Put it in
sometimes
Chat
people,
GPT.
ChatGPT, of course, but sometimes I guess you have limited access to profiles if you've only got a basic LinkedIn. I kind of get that, but it'll still be on their website. It will definitely be on their website. So
Yeah,
if
you
they just
can
said,
find that
I've
out.
looked on the website, I've been on LinkedIn, I've tried to find, if maybe this person is hidden, it's very possible. Some people, then fair enough. So it's little things like that. And the reason I think it's so important for us to share this today for our audience is that these are the little things that I think will make you persistent and prove resilience, as opposed to saying, I'm resilient and I will not give up. It's the ones that have explored every avenue, even if it's
Mm.
like researching for a project. So I
And
think
also remember, right,
hmm,
that in this job, you have to, for example, use LinkedIn for business development or candidate
yeah,
stuff to find people. Now, if you're in your second recruitment job and you aren't able to use LinkedIn to find somebody, but if we take it back to trainee level,
yeah,
when I'm saying to you, right, go and speak to a recruitment consultant, this is a
yeah,
video on how you can do it, these are some questions to ask, and you can't do that, well,
hmm,
then you're going for the wrong job, love,
fair enough.
because in this job, guess what? You've got to find people to speak to that you've never spoken to before and find
Yeah.
out information.
I use me as a benchmark, and that's a really arrogant thing to say, but in my first week in recruitment, so bear in mind, I started in recruitment before you had any technology. You literally had to do it all by literally picking up the phone. And at the end of my first week, the MD of this, it was a national business, but there were about 500 consultants. He came up to me, I'd already made a placement in my first week. I don't know how I did it, but I did. And he came up to congratulate me, and he said, if we asked you to go and get the phone number for the Queen of England, who was obviously still alive then, you'd be able to do it, wouldn't you? And I went, of course I would. And he went, and you'd be able to get through to her. And I went, well, I don't know if I'd actually get to speak to her, but I bet I'd get through. And it's that kind of fearlessness that you need to have, where it's almost like you don't actually give a fuck about making a fool of yourself, picking up the phone and doing a business development call, asking what you might think is a stupid question to the person training you, whether that's you at the front end of it or once you've placed them. There's no such thing as a stupid question. And what's the worst that can happen? I think that I look for that in people who are in the early stage of their career, that they've got that mindset, like, what's the worst that can happen? Just get on with it.
Mm, yeah, and it's different things motivate different people. I think we make the assumption that, oh yeah, people that want to do recruitment will be motivated by money and
No?
whatever. Not always the same. It can be a byproduct of money, obviously, but
Mhm.
I just want to see that sort of, obviously I can't see them when I'm on the phone, but do you know what I mean about like the twinkle in the eye sort of thing? Like
You
you're
can hear
like,
it.
yeah, you can hear it in someone where you think, do you know what? And they're all different personalities, but where you think, yeah, I can see you doing this. I can
Do you think
feel
there's a
feel that you want
tone?
it, but I can see you
Yeah,
doing it.
do you think there's a tone? I think there's a tone that works in recruitment, and you've either got it or you haven't. I don't know if you do you know what I'm talking about, where you can hear this, maybe it's hearing the sparkle in their eye, but it's this
It's the
determination in
energy.
the energy in their voice.
It's I sense yeah, I just sense that sort of energy from people where like I think you've got a spark and there's something here where I'm excited talking to you.
Yeah,
And it's and I can see I can make you that finished article.
yeah,
Like, and I this is what I used to be like in my old role. I used to get where I the sweet spot for me was all my competitors were only working with the placement on legs grads. And don't get me wrong, of course I was dealing with them, but they were all dealing with them as well. So whereas I was making sure I was spotting the people that were average at the start, but had so much potential and making them placement on legs people. And because the other agencies were like, nah, I can't be asked with them.
Mm. Yeah,
And now I want to, that for me now it's, a lot of the people I speak to are applying for jobs and not hearing anything back and going applying direct to agencies and not getting anything back or being told, they're not right yet or whatever. And I'm thinking, but yeah, I'm going to make you right because I can see you can do this. you can do
It
this.
just disappoints me so much that people don't get feedback. I just find it absolutely
Or they
bonkers.
get put through awful assessment centres. I did try and report an agency recently, actually, but it's absolute madness because they're not with the REC, or like I can't report them because you can only report somebody on gov.uk if they're like a temp agency and they've not paid somebody or something like
Yeah,
that. So I was like, this is nuts. We haven't got anyone we can report these agencies to they did something illegal basically in their assessment centre.
it's terrible.
Can't report them,
It's
so they can just carry
shocking.
on doing it.
Well, I mean, we've obviously got things like Glassdoor, and obviously, I think it's a case of making sure you educate people without it being slanderous, because we
Yeah.
often have situations like that where a company will talk about being award winning and they'll shout about it on LinkedIn, but we know that they're not looking after people, whether it's psychological safety, whether it's, mental well-being,
Mm.
whether it's actually paying commission and salaries on time. You tend to find what will happen then over a period of time is that those agencies, they will come a cropper. They will. I do genuinely believe, it makes me sound really happy clappy, but I believe in karma. I really do. So,
No, I do.
so
I do.
if you had the audience of the leaders listening now, and they're at a point where they're like, we do need to scale. Which way do we go? Do we go experienced, or do we go fresh, new? And I'm not talking grads either, by the way. I'm not grad. What are your arguments? What are your pros and cons for both of those elements?
I
Like, and
think
do you
you've
think it
got.
matters what they do and how they are as a business? Like, are there nuances to it?
I think as a business, you've got to think about where you want to take the business, but
Mm,
also what type of people you want in there, and it
yeah,
stands for both. So it could be that you decide you want a mix. It could be you just want to go after one or the other. It could be a budget thing as well. Let's be honest.
mm,
You might like the idea of having a top biller come and join your agency, but can you afford them?
yeah,
Like the reality of it.
mm,
So I think there's lots of things that come into it, but I think you've got to look at as a business. I think the consideration is if you think, okay, let's think about a trainee, could be one, could be a few, whatever you want to do. You've got to think, right, first of all, have we got the resources internally
yeah,
to do it?
yeah,
If we haven't, but we still want to do it,
mm,
have we got the resources to bring in somebody external to help us with that?
yeah,
Because you can't just bring in a trainee and do what I hear people say, like on the desk training.
yeah, yeah.
Like it's not fair on them either. Like you want to give them the best chance you want to set them up for success.
Of course we do.
It is for the benefit of your business because
It
they will be better performing consultants. You'll retain them. You're not going to retain them. You're going to waste your money if you don't have the resources internally to
agreed.
support them.
Agreed.
So I think that is a massive consideration is looking at that sort of budget piece,
Mm,
and who you've got internally that can support people. And also, do they want to support people?
mm,
Like when I was put into a management role, and I did want the management role, I thought I did, and this is years ago now. Um, I got given a trainee to manage remotely because we all worked remotely. And I didn't, it wasn't what it was cracked up to be because I wanted to make money.
it's the
And
biggest.
actually, I was told your priority is you need to keep your billings up
Uh,
and
it,
then look after this person. And he was so different to me. Chalk and cheese. I must have scared the life out of him because I was like 120 miles an hour, get things done yesterday, da 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 da. And he was like a rabbit in
it's
headlights.
like, wow, what
And
have I got here?
actually, check if these people that you think, oh, they'll look after that newbie, do they want to? And actually, do they have the qualities of a
Yeah.
manager? Because they're very different qualities to a top biller,
I
to a
totally.
high biller.
There's a lot of things you just covered there. I'll try and remember all of them as I kind of pick up on them. First of all, let's start with that last point. I think first of all, the notion that a billing manager is just going to come in and naturally want to move up from being a top biller, I think is the biggest misconception of our industry, and it is one of the main reasons why people then choose to call me, because they are dissatisfied. They're probably earning less money, and it wasn't agreed with them. So I think that's
They
where
probably haven't got time.
they haven't got time. There should always be an agreed, it should be a mutual decision that that's the path. They should have succession planning in place, lots of training before they get to the management level, and agree if that's not something that they enjoy doing after a set period of time, they can then move into a principal role where they're still perception status wise and earning potential wise.
Mm.
I think that's the biggest misconception, that billing manager is what everybody wants. Going back to what you just said there about the investment from external, or possibly, some people do put it on, certain leaders to take on the training. Do you think then it works that there's an economy of scale, i.e. you don't just take on one trainer, you might take on two or three, so there's like a buddy scheme? What are your thoughts on that?
I've seen that work really well, where because they're not, like you say, it's a buddy thing. They support each other. They're not the only
Yeah,
trainee in the business.
yeah,
And look, the reality is that not let's say they go through the best process ever. You think they're great. They have done their research. They show the right attitude.
yeah,
But there's lots of things out of our control. And that one trainee you take on, their dog might die, or I don't know, so like they might decide it's not for them later down the line, they leave,
yeah.
right? At least if you've got a group, you're
Yeah,
like, that's okay. We took on three, we've now got two. We
yeah,
don't have to start recruiting again. We've still got enough people. So there's
agreed.
that sort of mindset
Mm,
around it. But I think again, I think it comes down to your sort of recruitment budget that you've got. Like, what can you actually and can you pay three people? Because they all might work out. You can't bank
yeah,
on one. Not, hopefully they do all work out. And I think it's important to. I think when you bring on trainees, um, when they, I think if they're doing a 360 role, they've got to learn their business development. And I have, I've worked with people that have brought clients on their second month, right? But what I've seen work brilliantly is in month one, if you can give them some delivery stuff to work on to build up their confidence
yeah,
and split fee sort of stuff, just to help the consultants out, they soar. So if you're thinking, right, we haven't got any jobs that they can help out with because the consultants are
yeah.
scraping the barrel, I think you've got to have a think about that, because otherwise, if they're just sitting there with like no candidates to practice talking to, no sort of, they start to get to know the process of taking a candidate through that journey.
Yeah.
They're not, you can do role plays all day, but they're not learning.
No,
That's agencies that I've worked with that have taken on, like they've got me to run a little academy for them. That's what they've done really well, is they've
agreed.
given them little things to work on
Yeah.
with the consultants to build up that confidence and get a flavour for, like, you remember your first placement. I remember my first
No,
placement. How amazing does it feel?
amazing. It was amazing.
Amazing.
I'm so pleased that that's your recommendation, because I firmly believe that entrenched in our industry is a whole, well, lots of generations now of those that started in this way, i.e.,
I did.
were building their mindset of understanding their market, the different jargon of any desk that you will put on, what it doesn't matter what your desk is, by speaking to the candidates first. It's what will build your confidence. You can make more mistakes but not realize it, because, well, as in the client isn't going to ever know because you made the mistake, maybe
No,
a jargon, or you mispronounced something. And I think some of the best recruitment leaders that I've had the privilege to partner over 20 odd years in Rec to Rec have been ones that when they started, as I did, they started as a candidate focused recruiter with the intention of becoming 360. I think where I've seen people crash and burn, quite literally burn out, are those that do it the other way around, where it's that hardcore vacancy control, or whatever you wanted to call it back in the day, which we still see that now, where they're, for a trainee to be brought on in a trainee 360 role from day one, you are just setting them up to fail, because it's a
well,
lot
the
of.
caveat to that, I would say, so I do think if the aim is to make them 360,
Yeah.
the biggest mistake you will make, and I see it, I'm talking because I see it,
Mm.
is if you go, well, when they're ready, we'll start
Yeah.
their BD. And that will be 6 months down the line, they're
Yeah.
shit scared of it.
Might be
So
never.
I think start training them very early on BD, get
Agreed.
them to start doing BD early. But
Yeah.
what I meant with that is that you can't expect them to be bringing on shitloads of clients. It's baby steps.
Yeah.
So that, but to start them on the delivery stuff early, because it all links together, doesn't it?
Of course it
This
does.
nice process.
Absolutely.
Everything makes sense to them then. It's like, oh, okay, so I find a candidate, then I do this, then I do this, and then I could spec them to a client, or I could do that. So I think
Agreed.
don't leave the BD
No.
introducing them to it, but you've got to train them on it. You've
But
got
this is
to,
but
like,
this is what went so wrong post-COVID boom, because nobody needed to do that. And even though they were called recruiters, they were certainly blooming paid. They were blooming paid a full recruiter's role, but actually they were just, and I'm saying just, the delivery side is really hard and it's hard to get it right. So I 100% agree with you. What I'm saying is that I think if you look at, for me, it's things like taking references. You know, that is a business development skill, which a recruiter who is at the start of their journey, tasked with interviewing candidates, they're not working, we're going to go and reference you. Great, go and speak to decision makers. Oh, and obviously during that phone call, let me introduce you. I'll send you a LinkedIn, can I hook in a call with you to understand what you look for when you're hiring. Before you know it, you're doing 360. So I think it's really important that you've made that point, because I think so many people were missold, and it wasn't that the leaders were misselling intentionally, it's just the way the market was. But I think you and I have got a responsibility to anyone listening now that's a leader that wants to hire, which is why it's so critical for me to get you on, that if we look at the landscape, I mean, who really knows? No one has a crystal ball. I think it's almost gone full circle, and we need to bring people in who, even when it's a land of plenty and there's loads of jobs coming in, will always have that mindset of business development always comes first. You never stop.
And what they want more, you know, they'll think, what else can I do? What more can I do? How can I? They won't rest on their laurels. And I think a lot of people sort of kicked back and sort of
Yeah.
like, I don't need to do this. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, you know, what I look for is people that they want things from their life. They want to go places, be somebody. And that can come in all sort of shapes and forms, can't it? Like I said earlier, everyone's got different aspirations, goals, motivations. You know, I speak to some people that are like, you know, I want to buy a house for my mum, or, you know, it's all different stuff. But you know, people that want to go places, that don't just want to plod along, because again, you can get paid the same salary as an entry level recruitment trainee role and work in Tesco and stock shelves and not be stressed every day. Do you know what I mean? Like
That
it's
sounds great. I have to
don't
say, some days it's something that you'd love to do. I mean, joking aside, I think that's really valid. And I think, you know, if we're to leave a lasting impression from this podcast today, it's that even when you might be hiring to scale at trainee level, it's still important to unpick what makes that person tick, so that when you bring them in and you are training them all the way through their career, their whole full life cycle, it's understanding that everybody has different motivators and it is not one size fits all.
yeah, it's a very it's an assumption that gets made all the time. I think, and I totally get it, right? Because again, I work with a lot of billing managers and they're so overwhelmed. Like they have so much to do. It's the hardest job, right? It's so hard. And actually, the crux of the problems a lot of the time is that assumptions are being made, miscommunication. So when I say conflicts, I'm not talking about full blown like
Yeah,
fights and stuff, but you know what I
yeah,
mean.
yeah,
And there's all these things being missed or going wrong because actually they're not communicating or understanding, and it works both ways, understanding each other.
yeah,
So these assumptions are being made. So I spoke to a manager yesterday, and he was worried that something wasn't being done because the consultant couldn't be bothered, or you know, didn't was laziness basically. But actually, it wasn't that. He was afraid of failing. He was afraid of doing something wrong. So he didn't want to upset the manager. So he was resistant and avoiding it. So he wanted to do it deep down, but it was like, oh, I really don't want to upset him and do it wrong. What if I do it wrong? So because he was thinking he was lazy, he was going in and being too critical, which was then further reinforcing, oh God, I
yeah.
can't, this is, do you know what I mean? So
Yeah, it's a
it
cascade
goes,
effect,
it
then, isn't it?
spirals.
It does. It does. And then we've all got a responsibility to ensure that whatever sort of cascades from leadership down is positive, reinforced with great training and great coaching. And that's for me the most important thing that we can invest in. But and that's ongoing, by the way. That is ongoing. This has been, I knew it'd be brilliant because I just, you know, in real life and in on your video persona, you're just such a natural, caring, compassionate, but knowledgeable person. And I think I'm
Oh,
really
thank
excited
you.
what your business does. And I think you've definitely cornered a niche in the market that I think has been needed for a very, very long time. And if anybody's interested to get in touch with Kate, we'll make sure all of Kate's contact information. Obviously, please mention the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast when you contact Kate, so she knows where you got the lead from. And we can't wait to see what comes from, you know, your podcast, which obviously is very exciting as well. It's got a similar name. Tell us about it.
Well, there's two. So I've got, and you've been on both actually. So, well, we'll have by the time this goes out. So, I've got Recruitment Uncensored. It's my LinkedIn live show. I love doing that. That's fortnightly. And then I host Recruit CRM's podcast, which is called the Recruitment Podcast. So
Yeah.
that's a separate thing. So, yeah, we've had you on both.
I know. Well, I like to sit on both sides of the desk. I just like talking about recruitment. To me, it just comes out. I could talk about it literally till it comes out my ears. You have been joyful, as I knew you would be. Thank you so much for joining us. How was it being a guest?
Loved it. I love, like, you probably feel the same. When you're the host all the time, it's nice to go on as a guest. And I just love talking to people about recruitment. Like, yeah, love
You're,
it. I could sit here and
you're,
talk to you all day.
me too. Well, we do very often.
We
You're
do,
one of
yeah.
the good guys, and I'm so happy that you're in my beautiful network. And I don't know who introduced us, but I think you just kind of fell upon each other at the Recruitment Expo, if I'm right.
Probably.
You were probably, I
Yeah.
think we were both heckling Wendy
Joe
Gannon.
Phillips. It was Joe Phillips and Wendy.
It was Wendy and Joe Major as well, I think. You were in that
Yes.
kind of cohort. I think you were darting around the stage or something like that. And I was like, who's this crazy guy? I want to know. Thank you so much for joining us. You've been joyful, as I knew you would be.
Thank you for having me.